to do is we're just going to add some lines of code here to the view did load that are going to make that view where our colors show up look a little bit nicer. Remember that view we named color view, and it has a layer attribute which then has these other attributes: border width, corner radius, and border color. So the border width is going to give us a nice amount of thickness to the width. The corner radius is going to curve the corners, so they're not just square, angled corners. And then the border color is going to give us give the border a color, so that it'll stand out from the rest of the scene. So you could copy and paste this code in if you want from the iBook. Let's go ahead and type in the code. So this is all the way up here and under this view did load. So I'm gonna put any stuff you need underneath this comment, and I'm still gonna leave updating the colors the last thing I do. I'm gonna sort of build this this border first. So the first part is the border width. So color view, that's the name of our view dot, and then we're doing everything with layer and border width. We're going to set that to 5, and then color view, layer, and then this is the corner radius. Corner radius, we're going to set that equal to 20, and then color view, layer, border color. And this is an interesting one. So it's a color property. It's UI color.black.cg color. So UI color black CG color. Yep. All right, so that's going to give us a nice looking border on. You won't see it here on your storyboard, but when you actually run the app, you should see this this border show up. So before I do my final run of the app, I'm going to do one last thing, which is this idea of disabling the sliders. So what's interesting is each of our controls have a property called isEnabled, and so that's something you can use in your code. You can set isEnabled to false if you don't want it, don't want the user to be able to interact with it, and then you can set it to true when you want them to interact with it. So we're going to create this new method called update controls, and the idea is, so look what they're doing here in the code, which is essentially they're assigning whether or not the switch is on to whether or not the slider should be enabled. So the idea here is this is kind of like using an if statement, where it's essentially anytime this function is called, it's going to check whether or not the red switch is on or off, and set the sliders isEnabled to that same idea. So if this is true, this will be true. If this is false, this will be false. And we want this function to be called anytime a switch is changed. So anytime a switch moves from on to off or off to on, we want to update controls. So let's go ahead and write this function, and then we'll call the function where we need to. So let's put it down here. So this will be func, update controls. So now I'm just going to do each of those. So I'm going to set the red slider dot is enabled equal to red switch dot is on. So if the red switch is on, the red slider will be enabled. If it's off, the red slider will not be enabled. And then I'm going to do the same thing for green slider. Switch. And the blue slider. Oops. Blue switch. All right, and now we need to call this function anytime we change a switch. Well, anytime we change a switch is up here. It's this action that's anytime a switch is changed. We want to update the color, and we also want to update the controls. And then we should probably also do that when the app first loads up. So up here in View Did Load, in addition to updating the color, let's update the controls. So that way when the app is first turned on, with these switches being off, we won't be able to operate the sliders until we actually turn each of the switches on. All right, so this should be it. So I'm going to run this. So, all right, let's see how this looks. So you can see now, once we've updated this, we've got these nice rounded edges to our view here, our color view. And also, it should be set, because I called the update controls in View Did Load, where I can't actually interact with these sliders. You see that each of the sliders are red, green, and blue. And then as soon as I turn the red switch on, now I get this red color in the switch, and the slider I can now move. Same thing should happen with green. We get a green color, and I can move the green slider, and blue color, blue slider. And if I turn any of these, as soon as I and notice you should sort of be able to see it when you turn a switch on or off. If you look carefully at the slider, you should see that this slider sort of dim a little bit to tell you that, oh yeah, you cannot interact with that slider because it is no longer enabled. All right, that is the ColorMix app. Gone through this was an introduction to how to mess with actions and outlets for objects that you add to your scene, and also a little review of how colors work on computers. This idea of using red, green, and blue to create all these different variations of colors on your screen.